This is going to be a lesson where I focus less on how you can be an effective counselor towards your co-counseling partner and more about how you can get the most out of your sessions, how you can get your sessions to go where you would like them to go and have them have the kind of healing impact on your life that you would like them to have. And there was a lesson earlier on this subject, and now we're coming at it in a different way in this one. What I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to talk about different ways to use your session time. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is to start planning ahead of time before you're doing a co-counseling session, which of these ways you're going to plan to focus on that day. And I'm going to encourage you to try to cycle through about 4 or 5 different ways of using your session time. Not like always do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then go back like you would do them all the same amount. Some of these sessions you may do only very occasional sessions on, and some of these you may use very, very regularly. But what I mean by cycle through them is just try to include them all from time to time and try to think, oh, geez, I haven't done that kind of session or this other kind of session in a long time. I should work those in sometime soon. So first, we have a tendency, almost everybody I find has a tendency to talk through their sessions. And it's very easy, just kind of session after session, week after week, to just spend your session time talking. And some of that is really good. It's good to spend some session time talking. We have a lot to say. We have a lot we want to be heard about. We have a lot that we would like to get attention about. But you're not going to feel the kind of progress in life and the kind of healing in your emotional world that you really want to feel if you're talking your way through all your sessions. And so start to notice when you're doing that and start to plan these other ways of using your session time. And ideally, you would move towards having the talking through your sessions type sessions become the minority and have much more commonly sessions that you're using in quite conscious ways to do particular pieces of work. So the first way that I'm going to talk about, and those who know me won't be surprised that this is going to be the top of my list, is sessions where you really pursue deep discharge, where you try to go after the laughter or after having a good cry or after working out anger that you need to work out through storming it out. And to plan ahead for this, to say, you know what, I need a good cry today, or I need to really get a good laughing fit going today. And there are ways to make that happen if you consciously want to do it. And I'm going to talk more in another video in much more detail about different strategies for pursuing discharge. But what I'm going to say just in this one is just a few examples. So when you know you need a good cry, so maybe you bring some photos to your session and you look at some pictures and talk about them. And if you're doing in-person counseling, this tends to work particularly well because you can look at the pictures together and you can show them to your counselor. And photographs often have big emotional impacts on us, right? They can evoke a bunch of feelings. Bring a song that is like your cry song, the song that really gets you crying, or just a song that you just find moving and love and really love listening to, and play the song. And again, you listen to it with your co-counselor. There are certain stories from your past that you know are likely to be really emotional when you tell them, and not just the kind that make you miserable, but like the kind that tend to get something going inside you, like the kind that have much more mixed emotions, for example. When you need a good laugh, there's a technique of telling embarrassing stories. And it's uncomfortable telling embarrassing stories, but that's exactly why it makes you laugh. And so there are ways to think ahead. And with respect to anger, there's usually sort of endless things that people have to be angry about because there's so much injustice in this world. And you plan ahead, like this is one of those days when I'm not just going to tell about it, but I'm going to get loud and I'm going to pound pillows and I'm going to stomp my feet and I'm going to yell at the person as if that person was in the room, and I'm going to get into it. I'm going to really go for it. So have some substantial portion of your sessions where you really go after discharge, and when you decide ahead of time, like I'm not going to talk through my whole time this time. I'm really going to go after some things and try to really go after discharge. Another really valuable way to use session time is to talk about happy times you've had in life. And we have a set of questions. We have a little handout about that that's in the co-counseling manual of a whole bunch of questions that you could read to yourself or that your counselor could ask you. Because when you just sit and say, well, I'm going to talk today about happy memories from my life, your mind will often go blank. That's just how it works for us. It can be hard to just out of nowhere to think of pleasant memories. So we have a whole set of questions that help to bring specific things to mind. Tell a story about the early part of like one of your really important friendships, or tell a story about the time that you fell mutually in love with someone, but tell the happy part, not necessarily the hard things that came later. And don't tell that story about someone who turned out to be a terrible person, because that will not lead to where you want this style of session, the positive memory style session, to go. Tell about a time that you had fun doing something you weren't supposed to do. I mean, those can be really fun stories from our childhood or our adolescence. Sometimes even in our adulthood, we have fun stories about times we were doing something we weren't supposed to be doing. So look down that list of questions from the manual. And for those of you, by the way, who haven't heard me talk about the manual, it's just free at peaklivingnetwork.org. For anyone who wants to practice co-counseling, you just go to the section of the website that's got the materials, and you'll see, the Healing Partnership, the manual for co-counseling, has all kinds of instruction and all kinds of specific materials, like actual lists of questions to use and resources like that for both counselor and client for your experience in both of those roles. So the concept here that I really want to push across is that sessions that are spent talking about happy things are not time off from the work. They are a really essential part of the work. And there's a tendency among people, including among professionals, to feel like, well, that's avoiding somehow. It's like, no, it's not. This is just as important to our healing and our well-being, and it's just as real about life. We have a tendency to think of, when people are talking about facing reality, they're also talking about painful stuff, as if somehow painful stuff were more real than the happy stuff in life. Well, no, the happy stuff in life is just as real as the painful stuff. And we need much more time remembering what's gone well, celebrating what's gone well, and sharing it with someone. Like, this is in a co-counseling context where you have someone else's loving attention for an uninterrupted period of time, and that uninterrupted attention has very different emotional effects than the normal back and forth of human conversation has. It affects us in a really different way. You sit there for 45 or 55 minutes, the whole length of a co-counseling term, talking all about some really happy times you've had in life. You're going to feel the impacts of that. And you know how what a high value I put on emotional discharge. Well, those kinds of sessions are likely to lead to much more discharge in your life. They're not necessarily going to lead to discharge during that session, but they're going to create a context where a day later or 3 weeks later, you're suddenly in some crazy laughing fit, or you're suddenly having one of those wonderful, cleansing, deep, sobbing type cries. And one of the ways to have a deep cry is to go after a deep cry. But another way, and some days that'll work, right? But another way to have a deep cry is to do something completely different that I call creating the context for deep discharge, where you're not like chasing after it with a hammer and a chisel. You're looking almost off in the opposite direction and letting that deep discharge sneak up and grab you from behind. And so positive memories are absolutely part of the work. They're also just fun. And what's wrong with just doing things because they're fun and they feel good? We don't want to get this kind of work ethic so exaggerated that we forget the value of just doing things precisely because they feel good. And I think it actually does work even from a work ethic standpoint, because what I notice is that people's healing overall over an extended period of time goes better, goes deeper when they spend more of their time really remembering to celebrate what's going well now and to celebrate and really dig into and enjoy and relish in positive times that there have been in the past. So set aside a session once in a while saying, this is going to be a happy memories or a positive memories day. Look through those questions with your counselor, or just ask your counselor to ask you questions from the positive memories question list, and just revel in it. Just drink it in for your whole turn, unless it takes you to some other place. If it takes you to some other place, then of course you go with that. There are all kinds of sessions where you end up going to a place that you weren't expecting at all because that's what happened, and that's fine. I always encourage you, if suddenly you find yourself in a different place emotionally, go with it. Next, to tell in tremendous detail, I'm talking now about a different kind of session, a third kind of session. Tell in tremendous detail the story of a relationship with someone that has been really important to you in your life, someone whom you've really loved. So it could be a dear friend, it could be a partner, maybe your current partner, or maybe a longtime partner from the past. Again, not someone who turned out to be awful, but or someone you had a meaningful relationship that had some really good aspects to it in the past. A friend, a relative, a mentor, a hero, someone that was in your life, though, that you had a close relationship with, a parent, someone that really touched your heart. Tell how the person came into your life. Of course, if it was a relative, they were, of course, just there, but you can still tell the story of what you remember of getting to know them when you were young and those early kind of things. If it was a friendship or a lover, tell about how you met the person and try to remember that early stage of realizing that you've got real fondness for this person, not just with our partners, but also with our friends. With our dear friends, you can get in touch with these memories of that early moment when you start to realize, I really like this person. Like, this is going to be somebody that matters in my life, or I want them to be at least. And to really go, tell the whole story of the relationship like you were writing a novel about it. Tell the different things that you did together. Try to remember all different things of conversations that you had and interactions that you had that included other people and ones that you had alone together, and things that you struggled about, where your difficulties were in that relationship, what the things that you were sometimes hoping that could be that couldn't be in that relationship. How the relationship changed over the years. If the person died, to tell about their death, or if your relationship eventually grew apart, tell some about that experience of growing apart and what was sad or difficult about it and how it happened. So it's like to tell the whole story. And again, just revel in it. Just revel in how much this person has meant to you. Maybe they still mean a tremendous amount to you, maybe not anymore, but really get into it. And again, telling a story of one or maybe two relationships can easily fill a whole 45, 55 minute turn in a counseling session. So once in a while, set aside a time to do that one. And then the two more that I'm going to really highlight for today. One is in chapter 5 of the Joyous Recovery, there's a whole series of questions that guide you to explore strengths that you have and just aspects of yourself that you can feel proud of, things from the present and things from the past that you've done well, things that you've been good at, ways that you've come through for other people, ways that you've been a good friend to people, or ways that you have loved people, acts of courage that you've had in your life, just all kinds of things, again, that we tend to forget and that we tend to not pay enough attention to. And maybe I should create something for the manual that summarizes stuff, since not everybody has the Joyous Recovery, that takes you through these steps for doing. It's almost like a positive inventory of who you are and how you've lived, and to really look at what you can be proud of about who you've been and what you've done and how you've thought and how you've loved. And again, you could fill a session, you could fill many sessions with that kind of positive inventory work. And then related to things I said earlier, a fifth type of session that I would like you to kind of keep in the cycle is just sessions where you just plain have fun. And I'll give you examples of some ways to do it. One of the ways that I have encouraged people to do sometimes is just tell about one of your greatest interests or so-called hobbies. I don't really like the word hobby because I find hobby kind of trivializing, but we should really call it more like passions or interests, because hobbies kind of makes it sound small. And often what people call their hobbies are this is actually what they love, what they most care about in life, what they're most devoted to. And so maybe, our passions or our interests, and there's something that you really care about, that you really enjoy doing or enjoy thinking about or enjoy learning about. How many opportunities have you ever had to just talk uninterrupted for 50 minutes or something, close to an hour, just all about it, what you've learned about it, what you love about it, what its role is in your life? If your passion is scuba diving, or your passion is reading historical novels, or your passion is quilting, or your passion is playing baseball, or whatever it is, just tell all about it. Get really into it. Share how much you know. Share how excited you get by certain things. Just totally get into it and have fun. Another activity in this category is just to tell the story of one of your favorite novels, or just tell the story of one of your favorite movies. Again, telling in quite a bit of detail. You'll not only have fun, but typically you are going to end up doing some discharging. Typically you're going to end up particularly laughing as you tell parts of this stuff, but also sometimes it's some really deep emotions are going to start to happen. But and that's great. Of course, you always want to go with those things when they happen, but the main point is to have fun. Fun is really valuable just in itself. And plan, okay, what I need today? I need a session where I have fun. And your counselor will have fun with you. So I'm going to talk about a few other things, a few other concepts of ways to use sessions, but those 5 I'm really going to encourage you to keep coming back to, and notice if it's been a long time since you've done one of those sessions and plan for it. And I can give some links to handouts maybe in the below the video. So some other things to keep in mind as possible ways to use session time. One is to actually use the session time to accomplish something that you've been having a hard time getting done. So we all have things in life that we really dread doing because they're emotionally intense, or because they involve some kind of conflict or some difficult aspect of life, or just things that we really don't enjoy, but that just really need to be done. And so we keep putting them off and putting them off. Or we've become overwhelmed by them because we put them off for too long, and now they've become something that we feel overwhelmed by. Well, what about using your turn to simply do that thing with your client, with your counselor's loving attention and encouragement? Come on, go. And you might think, my counselor's just going to be bored. It's like, it's not your job to entertain your counselor. And actually, your counselor won't feel bored, interestingly enough. But that's also beside the point. If your counselor's bored, he or she is bored. They'll be all right. They can live with it. It's not your job to provide entertainment. Co-counseling's got nothing to do with entertainment for the counselor. You may get some messages in your head like, well, I should be able to do this without somebody accompanying me. I don't know. Maybe you should and maybe you shouldn't. What difference does it make? You're not getting it done. Do it. Here's a way to do it. And to get ourselves through these places in life where we're stuck is such a relief. It feels so good. And it opens up all this space for getting other things done in our lives. Because typically, while we're not getting done certain things that we need to get done, we're as a result doing nothing. Like, we're not getting other things done because we're like, I gotta write that paper, except we're not writing that paper, right? So instead we're doing nothing. And so when you get this thing taken care of, it also just opens up all these other possibilities for ways you want to spend your time. That's a great way to use a co-counseling session, to use the person's attention to make it possible for you to get something done. You don't get to put your counselor to work, right? So like, if in your session what you really need to do is vacuum the living room that you've put off vacuuming for 3 weeks, you don't get to have your counselor help you vacuum. They only give you their loving attention. But yeah, they can just sit and watch you lovingly with their eyes on you while you vacuum the living room. On the website, on peaklivingnetwork.org, there's a whole set of exercises that accompany the Joyous Recovery. So look in those from time to time and choose one of those to bring to a counseling session. That's a great way to use your time in a session. Goal setting, which is based on chapter 14 in the Joyous Recovery. We'll also work on creating handouts that break that stuff down, again, for people who don't have the book. But that actually should absolutely be in your cycle. I didn't put it on the list of the key 5 because it's something that I really encourage people to come back to once in a great while. You don't have to spend sessions on goal setting over and over again. But I would say, something like 3 times a year, maybe 4 times a year, it's really, really valuable to do a session where you think about your longer term and shorter term goals and check in on how those are going and figure out where you need more support and encouragement to move farther on those. Now, there's a technique that we use in co-counseling in the short phrases that you may remember from earlier lessons, where we choose something to say to someone who's been important in our life as if that person were in the room. Like we actually look over that way and talk to the person and say, like, I always loved you, or you should never have been so awful to me, or whatever we need to express to that person. Now, a different way to use a session is to talk to someone in a completely different way. Like talk to them, not trying to use some short phrase or go after some particular emotion, but to say everything to that person that you would like to have expressed. Give them a whole speech, exactly what in some ways I discourage people from doing in sessions where they're trying to go after discharge. This session serves a different function where you do go ahead and give the whole speech, like say everything you would like to have expressed to the person, or maybe it's something you'll still get a chance to express. And then a related way that you can use session time once in a while is to practice saying something to someone that you really do need to say to them, that in real life you will do. Because usually when we're doing that talking to absent people thing, where we're talking to the person in the room, we're not literally going to say those things to them in real life. We're trying to just say everything we wish we could say, even if it wouldn't be a good idea for various reasons to say that in real life. But sometimes there are things we really do need to say to people for real, not just for our own emotional processing, but because it actually needs to be done. And so a session is a great place to practice that. Imagine that person's there and start saying the things that you need to say to them and deal with the feelings that come up. If it gets scary, if you get trembly, then it's a chance to deal with how scared you are about saying this stuff to the person. Or, you can work out a lot of anxiety through laughter, so you may start to laugh as you imagine actually saying this stuff. And you'll get clearer on what you need to say, so it'll help you in that way. And you'll also work through some of the emotions that are making you put off saying this thing to them, and it can help you get to a place then where you actually do it. Not necessarily during the session, but that sometime soon in life you actually tell them this stuff. And then lastly, I want to talk about quiet. That we typically need to spend more session time than we do being quiet, sitting quietly. You might do it for a minute, you might do it for 10 minutes, you might do it for half an hour. People don't usually do that. But a minute, 5 minutes, like a long period of quiet, where you just notice your counselor's attention, notice that he or she is really caring about you, look up at them from time to time and take in the fact that their eyes are on you, and feel it. And just focus on taking in their attention, breathing, taking deep breaths, looking around, some periods of having your eyes closed, and just notice what's going on inside you and just let it be there. Let it bubble up inside you. Let it roll around in there. Just see what's going on. We don't typically spend enough time just being quiet, and we don't spend enough time letting things happen inside of us. A stream of words can help us get to our emotions, but our stream of words can also chase our emotions away, and that's often. Our streams of words are often chasing emotions away. So when we sit quietly for an extended period of time, this isn't about being alone, because you keep noticing that your counselor is there, and just be with feelings. Sometimes that'll really help us get to a place where we know more about what we're feeling and we know more about what we need to express, and sometimes can help us get more to a place where those feelings also can really get out of us, can come through us in the ways that they need to come through us. And once in a while, it's good to use a session resting. I don't find that is very effective by phone or by video call by Zoom or whatever. But when you're doing in-person counseling, we have this concept in co-counseling called guarded rest, where you literally will lie on the couch or lie on a bed, wherever you're co-counseling, and just close your eyes. And your co-counselor maybe put a hand on you if you'd like that, or even hold you if you'd like to be held while you rest. And they keep their attention on you. They don't fall asleep. they keep looking at you. They keep their attention on you. Your eyes may be closed. And guarded rest is a wonderful thing. You may think, well, I can just do that. I can just lie down and be quiet anytime. It's not the same. It's different being accompanied by someone. And oddly enough, even though you're not looking at the person, you still feel their attention. It's still different than it would be if they just closed their eyes. I don't know why, but somehow, in some mysterious way, it's a different experience. And guarded rest, what we call guarded rest, is different from other rest. So these are a bunch of ways to use session time. I'll make this available, the key points available as a handout. It already is, actually. I'll just figure out how to put it up. And plan for these. One thing you might do actually before every session is look down this list and think, okay, how am I going to use my session time today? Now, I have a second part to today's lesson, which is a one counseling technique that I want to teach in this lesson. The rest of today has all been about your own turn. This is now going to be much more about the other person's turn, although you may choose any time to ask to do this during your own turn. Or the client can always propose the technique also. But this is a technique where the counselor and the client, as their current adult selves, create an image where they're going back to talk to the client when, I'll say when she was young. And a lot of co-counseling is about the creation of images, and powerful images are one of the things that really help us get a balance of attention so that we can go deep into feelings and with luck discharge them. And so this is a way to create a powerful image. You just work with the client and say, okay, so let's say the client is talking about a certain time in life. She's talking about a time when she was 8 years old and this or that and the other thing was going on in her life. And you might say, okay, where do you think you might typically have been? You think you might have been sitting in your room, or you might have been standing out in the yard somewhere, or you might have been in some trees somewhere, or you might be walking home from school. Where should we find this girl? Okay, so you decide where you're going to imagine she is that day. And then the two of you in this image, which you say aloud, the two of you come walking along. Okay, so we come walking along and there she is. What do you want to say to her? And then have the client express what she would want to say to her young self. And it could be so many different things. It could be, hey, I love you. I know you're feeling really alone right now, and I really love you. Or she might want to say to her young self, it's really nothing what's going on is your fault. Or she might want to say to her young self, you're going to have friends soon. Don't give up. Different times are going to come. Or she might want to say to her young self, don't listen to what the teacher said. You're really a smart kid. And then the counselor can say aloud things to that young girl, again, as if you were over in this place where you decide she is way back in time. Hey, how are you doing? I noticed you're having a hard time. What's going on with you? One of my longest term co-counselors in my life, someone that I co-counseled with for some 5 years, generally twice a week. I mean, wonderful, wonderful co-counselor in my life, a woman named Kathleen. She created this wonderful image for me that I have used over and over again, and I continue to use to this day, and get great sessions out of it on days when I need a cry. Where I'm sitting in the backyard, I'm a young kid, whatever, 7, 8, 9. This one just involves her coming along, not my adult self coming along. Where she just comes along, she's just this adult woman, and she says, "Hey, little boy, like you look like you're not feeling good. What's going on with you? Can you tell me about it? Like, I'd like to know. I'd like to know what's going on with you. It looks like you're having a hard time." I get teary-eyed when I just describe this image. And I wouldn't say anything back to her. I would just keep imagining my young self being there and imagine what it would have been like to have this loving adult just come along and notice that I was having a bad time and ask me what it was about. And I'd just cried and cried and cried through sessions. I've had some just outstanding cries from just imagining this question being asked. And my counselor will say it aloud. My counselor will say, gee, little boy, what's going on? Geez, I can tell things aren't so great. What's it about? I'm just crying. So there's different ways to set up the image based on what you find most evocative, what really helps you start feeling stuff. So try it both ways. Try having the client talk to his or her young self. Try having the counselor talk to that person and see what makes the most happen emotionally for the client. And both of you try saying like different kinds of things. Try saying reassuring things. Try saying things that aren't reassuring, things that are just validating, like, wow, you're having a really tough time right now, or wow, I really get that you're in a really tough place. Just try saying different things and see which things turn out to really hit the right spot for the client. When to use a technique like this, you can try it almost any time when the person's talking about a certain period in life when things got really hard. It tends to work particularly well for things where the person felt really alone at that point, felt like other people weren't noticing what was going on, or other people were failing to intervene. And this is a chance to create an image that gives the client a sense of what it would have felt like if someone had noticed, or someone had intervened, someone had stood up for them, someone had validated them. And that'll often allow that balance of attention to take shape that allows feelings to actually start to move through us and be dischargeable. So work this technique into a session soon. I encourage people, when you're learning a technique, to look for a time soon to use it, even if it maybe is a little bit artificial, a little bit forced the first time you do it, because it's worth practicing, even if it's not an ideal way. That's what will make a technique start to become part of your repertoire as a counselor, is when you actually use it soon after learning it, and that gets kind of integrated into the circuitry.